Here's the next example in section 1.6. We're going to solve for x and then graph it. This problem says 1 minus 3x is greater than or equal to negative 14. And so now I kind of do the same thing I always do when I solve for x, which is to get all the numbers on one side and to get all the variables on one side. So I'm going to get rid of the 1 on this side by subtracting it out, and that equals 0. And then I'm also going to subtract it from this side, and that equals negative 15. And so now I have 3x is greater than or equal to negative 15. Now here's the difference between solving an equation and solving an inequality. This is very important. So here we have negative 3x is greater than or equal to negative 15. If this was an equation, a regular equation, so negative 3x is equal to negative 15, then I would do what I always do, which is divide this out, divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3, and get the answer as 5. But that's actually not what you do here. And the rule is, anytime you have an inequality and you are multiplying or dividing by a negative number, you flip the sign. So for example, here, to solve it, I'm going to divide this side by negative 3 to get rid of it. And I'm also going to divide this side by negative 3. But like I just said, for inequalities, if you divide by a negative number or multiply by a negative number, so right here this becomes 5, you have to flip the sign. So this sign gets flipped, and it actually becomes less than or equal to 5. So just to show you that again, when you have a negative number, and when you have a negative number on one side, and you're dividing it out, so I'm going to divide by negative 3 instead of a positive 3, I'm going to divide this side by negative 3 too, and I get 5 on this side, I get x on this side. You have to flip the sign. So flip it over so it's less than or equal to 5. It's that simple. And you do this every time you're dividing by a negative number or every time you're multiplying by a negative number. So for example, if I had negative 1/2 x is greater than 2, and I was trying to get the x alone, I would multiply this by negative 2 to cancel this out. I would also multiply this by negative 2. But my answer wouldn't be x is greater than negative 4. It would actually be x is less than negative 4. Why? Because we flip the sign. Anytime you multiply or divide by a negative number, and you do it on both sides, you have to flip the sign. That's the big difference between solving regular equations and solving inequalities. You have to flip the sign when you multiply or divide by a negative number. So let's go back to our problem. We have x is less than or equal to 5, and we want to graph it on the number line. And so we'll do that the same way. We'll find 5. Actually, let me write it for you here. It's x is less than or equal to 5. So we find 5, we circle it. Because there's this equal sign right here, that means we're going to color in the 5. It's included in the solution. And then it's less, so I'm going to go towards the left, and I'm going to color in everything until the arrow. And there you have it. That's how you graph x is less than or equal to 5.